Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we will look at converting percentages, fractions and decimals. Now we previously looked at converting between fractions and decimals. Now we'll just look at converting between each of these and percentages. So let's start with decimals. It's a lot easier to convert between decimals and percentages because to go from a decimal to a percentage, you just multiply by 100, and percentage to a decimal, you just divide by 100. So if I have 0.04 and I want to convert to a percentage, I just multiply by 100. Multiplying a decimal by 100 just means you move the decimal point 2 spots to the right. The decimal point, it end up here, you end up with the number 4 and just whack a percent sign. 1.17, if I want to convert that to a percent, I move the decimal point 2 spots to the right. Decimal point ends here. I end up with 117 and just write it as a percent. So any number more than 1 will be more than 100%. What about the other way? Percentages to decimals. I'm going to convert each of these to a decimal. Well, we're going to divide by 100. That means rather than moving the decimal point 2 spots right, we move it 2 spots left. 34 is the same as 34.0. So we move the decimal point 2 spots, drop the percent sign, it's 0.34. What about 3%? Well, 3 is the same as 3.0. So we're going to divide by 100 to make it a decimal. So we move the decimal point 1 spot to the left, then we've run out of numbers. So we have to put a 0 as like a placeholder. Decimal point moves there. 3% is the same as 0.03. How easy is that? Now let's look at converting between fractions and percentages. So for fractions to percentages, you find an equivalent fraction with denominator 100. So if I want to convert 27 over 50 to a percent, I want to make this denominator 100. So I need to times the bottom by 2. What you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So we get 27 over 50, that becomes 54 over 100, and that's just 54%. That's what percent means. This percent symbol means per 100, basically means a fraction whose denominator is 100. 54% means 54 hundredths, 54 out of 100 parts. So we'll do the same here. 32 over 25. This is an improper fraction, so our answer is going to be more than 100%. So I want to make the denominator 100. So 25 needs to be multiplied by 4 to get to 100. What you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. So 32 times 4. Remember, timesing by 4. Quick way, double it again. Double 32, you get 64. Double it again, you get 128. So 32 times 4 is 128. 25 times 4 is 100. 128 hundredths is 128%. That's what percents mean, per 100. 128% means 128 per 100. 128 out of 100. So let's look at going the other way. Percentage to fraction. You write the denominator as 100 and then simplify. So 35% means 35 hundredths. 35 out of 100 in total. So that is the same as 35%, we just want to simplify it. If you give your answer as a fraction, should always be simplified. So 35 over 100. Both top and bottom are divisible by 5 because they end in 5 or 0. So 35 divided 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. Another way of looking at this, if you got 7 out of 20 in your test, then you got 35%. 7 out of 20 is the same rate as getting 35 out of 100. So what about 6%? Well, we just write the number over 100, 6 over 100, and simplify. 6 can be divided by 2, 100 can be divided by 2. I can't simplify any further. 3 and 50 have no common factor other than 1. So 3 over 50 and 6% are the same. If you, for example, have been absent at school on 3 out of 50 days, you've been absent for 6% of days. So these are the same number, just written in a different way. It's basically saying if you're absent for 3 out of 50 days, on average, you'll be absent for 6 out of every 100. All right, let's now look at finding a percentage in a worded problem. So let's say I scored 19 out of 20 in a maths test. What is my mark as a percent? So we scored 19 out of 20, 19 over 20 in the test. How do we convert this to a percent? Well, this is a fraction. The way we convert fractions to a percent is we find an equivalent fraction with denominator 100. So to go from 20 to 100, I need to times by 5. If you times the bottom by 5, you must times the top by 5. So what is 19 times 5? So it may help you to times by 10, 190, and then halve it. You get 95. 19 times 5 is 95. So if you answered 19 out of 20 questions in a maths test, at the same rate, if there are 100 questions, you'd be expected to answer 95. 95 out of 100 is precisely 95%. So these are the same number. They both equal to 0.95. They're just written in a different way. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.